If you're in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, let's stand together just for a moment. I'm going to read 2 verses for you. And tonight, again, the message tonight, I just want to help us, prepare us to have a great week. This is one of the greatest weeks of the year. I look forward to this week just about more than any other week in the year. I'm not just saying that. I enjoy the revival. I endure share-a-thons. I enjoy share-a-thons, I do. But the share-a-thon is just different. That is a labor of love. But this is a week where missions is the heartbeat of God, where I want God to squeeze my heart like His heart is squeezed for the world. And I enjoy getting to meet the families and seeing families that we have supported. And this message is just a prime the pump. It's going to be very practical, very simple, no new thing, new to some, good for all. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 12. And we beseech you, brethren. He says, I'm pleading, I'm begging you, brethren, to know them which labor among you and are over you in the Lord, and admonish you to esteem them very highly in love for their work's sake, and be at peace among yourselves. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for the message tonight. We thank you for your word. And Father, we pray now that your Spirit would come and, Lord, that you would speak to our hearts. Lord, that you would speak through lips of clay. Lord, may I just simply be your vessel, your instrument, your servant. Lord, that to give to the hearts of your people that which you desire for us. We ask your blessing in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you, church. You can be saved. I'll confess, I feel a little bit, it's not just the travel this week. I'm telling you, the devil, I said this in prayer meeting, the devil is fighting this conference. There are things that are going on that not everybody is aware of, and I'm not going to wear you out with stuff, but there are just, and sometimes it's things that there are people that are dealing with spiritual battles, and sometimes the devil just, anything he can get. You know, one thing, my computer went down this week, and look, I'm a tech tard, but all I do is write sermons and save sermons on that computer. And I had to dig out a dinosaur while I'm waiting, and it's a brand new one. I had to dig out a dinosaur that doesn't hardly work at all. I type faster than I think, and this one doesn't even type. It doesn't even run all the keys. And so it's been more laborious for me, if I can say that, to get the messages ready, and I don't feel as prepared as normally because of that, because I've been fighting with those things this week. But I want to, again, I love this passage, what Paul said. And I understand he was writing to the church at Thessalonica about their pastors, their elders, their assistant pastors. But there is certainly an application for us. He says, I beg you. He said, brethren, he said, I beg you to know them which labor among you. Now, the missionaries that come, they don't labor among us, but they labor for us and on behalf of us. They are an extension of our church family. And we need to know them. If you're really going to get your heart squeezed, if you're really going to have a heart for missions, we need to know them and to know their labor. And a lot of times the missionaries, if they have a spirit of humility, there's going to be things about them we would like to know, but we're not going to know, because about humility is about that thing, about the time you start talking about it, it's about the time you lost it and you've given yourself over to pride, isn't it? But I think if you get around humble servants of the Lord and you just listen to them speak from their heart, you're going to get to know them and their labor. And he said, I admonish you to esteem them very highly. There are people that I think a lot of. Are there people that you think a lot of? I mean, I don't just mean pastors. I mean, there are people in this church that I hold in high esteem because of their walk with the Lord, their faithfulness to the Lord, their love for the Lord. We have different people that we love and respect. There are some people, look, when I was in the service, I had men that I served under. I just esteemed them because of the kind of man they were in a position of leadership, as a soldier in the military. There are people that we esteem in different ways, but these are people, our missionaries are people that we ought to esteem very highly. I've said this for years. Tear down the Spider-Man poster off your kids' bedroom walls and put up the prayer cards and let them know what a real hero is. Someone real, not fantasy, not fiction. And let me just say, Spider-Man and Batman today are not the ones that you grew up with in the 1960s and 70s. Okay? That's a whole different duck. I'm just saying we need to make sure in our homes that missionaries are highly esteemed. Well, I'm not talking about man worship. We're talking about esteem, that they are held in a high regard for who they are and what they do and in love, and to learn to love them for their work's sake. And he said, be at peace among yourselves. You know, when there is love, there is peace in the church, and usually joy. In fact, you find love, joy, and peace. Those are what we call a trichotomy. Those are three things that if you have one, you'll find the other two follow along. It begins with love, but you'll find that joy and peace always follow in line with them. Now, several months ago, I was at a week of camp. It was a large camp. There's over 500 people there. There was over 100 pastors, missionaries, evangelists, full-time workers alone, just 100. And a missionary that we support stood up and was giving a testimony. And he was testifying about, giving a testimony about missions and some things. It was a man we support. And he said this, and I want you to take this with a grain of salt, okay? But in the middle of his testimony, he made this statement. He said, if you want to know how to take care of missionaries, he said, you need to get with Pastor Cassel, because Bethel Baptist Church knows how to take care of missionaries. Now, folks, let me just pause. Compliments are like perfume. Sniff, don't swallow. Okay? Not trying to vaunt ourselves. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. And that compliment, though, was as much to our church as it was to the figurehead that was represented. Okay? But the greatest compliments I have heard through the years for our church have been the ones that have been when a missionary shows up and says, we've looked forward to coming here because we've heard about your church and that you love missionaries. What they're saying is you've been held in high esteem. Now, we're just a church, okay? We're a small country church in the middle of nowhere, but our church has a love for missions and a love for missionaries. And we take it seriously, and we worked hard at it. I had some preachers that came up, and I'm not trying. They were preachers that thought they were doing well for missions, and I'm not saying they were or were not. As far as I know, they are. But they're like, why did he single you out? What are you doing that we're not doing? And I'm telling you, I got my ear bent for several hours. You know, and I was very careful to say, you're probably doing a lot of the same things we're doing. I don't know what you do or what you don't do. I'll just tell you some things that we do. But we've had many people in our church have gone on mission. How many have gone on mission trips in the church? Look how many hands that is. And a lot of you, several. By the way, I understand that not everybody can go on every one, but we do these every 2 years. And you need to go at some point. By the way, when we go, we bring the wives and the kids. Okay, it's a family trip. Because when you go, when you get to the mission field, it becomes infectious. And the more people that go, and when it's not just the pastor, you know what's infected missions in our church? The people have gone on these trips and come back and have talked about them and shared what the Lord's done. And of course, you know, Jenny and I for years now, we haven't the last 4 years, we haven't traveled, but for years we traveled every year. It was supposed to last year, but we had a missionary that honestly came off the field, and so the meeting was canceled. But, and of course, there was some COVID years. It's like, you know, you got to throw out the high and the low at the Olympics, you know. And we're going to be in the Ivory Coast. That meeting's been scheduled for 4 years. Be teaching in a Bible college in the Ivory Coast in the month of July. And having been in a couple dozen countries, every inhabited continent, you get to meet missionaries. You get to meet missionaries you support, missionaries you don't support. You get to learn about missionaries. And we have always, and I'll go and preach in at least a couple missions conferences a year, and you get to see what other churches are doing. And one of the things I do with every missionary that comes through is I ask them this question. I said, I don't want to know any names. I don't want any dates. I don't want any places. But tell me what you've seen that you've liked, and tell me what you've seen that you haven't liked. And we have let the missionaries help us become better at this. Okay, and we're not perfect at this, but I don't think we're the best, but I believe this. I believe we do our best, and we're working all the time to improve. And we've learned to take care of our guests and to try to be good hosts. Okay? Now, this message, this isn't just for this week for the missions conference. There's families going to be here in the month of February. There's going to be a family to the Navajo Nation that's going to be here. There's going to be a family later this year to El Salvador and South Korea, and we'll have missionaries home on furloughs that will be coming through. So this is how we treat everybody that comes through here. And how we can esteem them. Esteeming, if you want the message, the title, it's Esteeming the Elders of the Gospel. And so I'm just going to give you some things that are very, very practical tonight that will help us and help us be a blessing. It's not about just them coming to be a blessing to us. We want to be a blessing to them, okay? Esteem them for their position. Esteem them for their position. You could say esteem them for their place. These are people that have answered a divine call from God. You wouldn't do this if God didn't call you clearly to do this. Now, I'm not going to say that there hasn't been people that have. I certainly, I believe that there are people that God has called who have not gone. I believe that there are people that God has called and they have come home because they, for whatever one reason or another, I can't get into all that, and perhaps they didn't count the cost of the tower, but most of the people, by and large, most of these missionaries that go, these are people that are answering a divine call, and most of them will be faithful. We always hear about the ones that are coming home and returning and things like that, but you know, we had 7 come off the field last year, but we had over 90 that stayed. Okay, 90 that stayed after 7 came off. Okay, we support near 100 missionaries. People say, how many missionaries? It's always somewhere between that 90 and 100. It is hard to keep. I keep the list. I don't always keep the count. You know, I don't always go through every week and check the count. I just check who we have and try to deal with that about once a year. But nearly 100 families. These are people that have no home. These are people that are expatriates. That's not a word that you and I use because we have a home, we have a nation. They are still citizens of the United States of America, but they are an expatriate. They are citizens of one nation that live in another nation. That does not put you in a popularity, winning a popularity contest. Most of the time, when a missionary gets to a field, they want to know, why are you here? And they'll say, well, we're here to start churches. And this is what they get. Why? We have churches. We have God. Do you think you're better than us? That's what they get asked. A lot of times they don't even tell them they're there to start churches. In some places they can't, depending on the nation they're in. If they're in what we call a restricted access nation or a creative access nation, they have to be very careful and about what they say and where they are and different things. So when they come here, and they're here from a Wednesday through a Sunday, this needs to be home. One of the greatest compliments a missionary can say at the end of a week is, we feel like we're at home here this week. Look, I preach in missions conferences, and I've listened to missionaries make that statement. I've noticed many times when they did not make that statement. They didn't feel like they were at home. And I'm not saying it was a bad church by any means, but people did not go out of their way to make them feel at home. You know what? If we live in a society, church, that people don't have people into their homes like they used to. Now they'll talk to you all day long on their telephone on some kind of social media account, but as far as being given to hospitality, having somebody into their home, can I get you a drink? Giving them the best place to sit, and making them feel comfortable, making them feel wanted. Look, if the missionaries come and all we do is walk in and sit in our pews and never speak to them, we've not made them feel at home. If we're just here and they're here, anybody, before you got married, ever have one of those awkward dates? Where you were both kind of there and neither one of you wanted to be there. It's like, when will this end and can we get out? Now, I'm not talking about the person you're married to right now, okay? I'm talking about somebody else, okay? We don't want them to feel like that. Look, you don't have to. Look, everybody in this room, if you have a hand, you can give a handshake and say, thank you for coming. We're glad you're here, and mean it when you say it. Make them feel at home. Make them feel like this is their place, their church. By the way, that's good for any visitor that walks in the door. And think about what their life is like. This is one of the things that I really try to really drive home that because compassion has some understanding of what they're going through. These are people, go home tonight. Go home tonight. These missionaries are coming in here this next week. This is what they're going to be doing. Go home tonight, get out a suitcase, and pack what you need for 5 days, and set it by the door, take it to the car, and then in the morning, bring it back in the house and unpack it. You don't even have to travel 500 miles. Just pack a suitcase. You know, people sometimes, they'll say, somebody will say, hey, have you packed yet? Now, I'm one of them guys, I am worldwide deployable. I learned this in the service. I can pack an hour before I go and be anywhere in the world and be content. But most people, I know people that start packing like they're going on vacation next week and they start packing the week before, doing their laundry the week before. How much laundry do you have that you have a week to do laundry and that it takes you a week to pack one suitcase, okay? And you're just going casual. It's not like you're packing shirts and ties and got to iron and figure out how to iron when you get there and is there an iron when you get there and pack dress clothes and casual clothes and this clothes and that. Just pack, get your kids in the car. Get them all in the car all at once. And then take them all back inside and pack and unpack a suitcase for them. So I don't have any kids. Go ahead and pack 3. Borrow somebody's kids. You'll have compassion for these people. They got to load and unload. And then we've learned something. You know what we've learned through the years? We got to be careful what we don't give them. Because they live in a car and they're going from church to church. We have become one of those places that the word is on the street where missionaries will come and say, can we leave some stuff here? Can you find a home for it? You wouldn't believe how much Bath and Body Works soap we have. You would not believe the gift cards that we've been given. You would not believe the flowers and the candles. Do you light a candle and stick it on your dashboard in your car? I understand the sentiment, but okay, we got to think here. We got to think. You're not burning potpourri going down the road. You got 3 kids, and you're sick of McDonald's, and they all want chicken nuggets, okay? We have to, we cannot inundate them with things that they can't, that they can't use. There are different beds, different time zones. We go through spring ahead, fall back once a year. We gripe about it every year. Man, a lot of times they're in different time zones 2 and 3 times a week. And when your sleep clock is off by an hour or 2 hours, in a different bed, in a different place, and sometimes it's noisy, sometimes it's too quiet, sometimes they got you in some place where there's no ambient light from the outside world, and you don't know if you're in a cave in Alaska or if you're in southern Indiana. Different nursery, every church, a different nursery. I said this morning. You have the privilege of being frustrated with the same people that you've known and loved for years. Different nursery, and they don't know the nursery workers here. You leave your baby with strangers. Would you drop your baby off with strangers in a strange church? No, you can't. But we expect them to. Don't think anything about it. Different church, different pastor. Let me tell you something. There's a lot of different churches out there. And there's a lot of pastors out there, a bunch of nut jobs. Got no business having anybody in. You wouldn't believe the number of times, that I know personally, pastors that have had missionaries come in and meet them at the church and don't have a hotel for them, don't have a place for them to stay, just meet them, don't feed them, and say, we'll see you in the morning, and then they leave and ask us, are we good? Literally, they'll say that, are we good? What they mean is, I'm not giving you anything. I'm not paying for your gas. I haven't paid for your meals. I haven't taken care of putting you up for sleep, and I'm definitely not giving you a love offering. And what are you supposed to say? No, you owe me $1,000? No, they just say we're good, and they get in the car, and they never speak about it, do they? How many missionaries have you heard tell that story up here? And it doesn't happen every place or every other place, but it happens more than you would think. It happens enough that it's something they have to deal with. Did you know that when you go to different churches that every church has a nut? I tell them when they come, everybody's got one, I got 2. Now, I'm gonna be honest here. I'm not calling no names or nothing. But God's been good. A few of ours have gone home to glory. And I'm glad they're in heaven. Thank God for the eternal security of the believer. I'm glad that their toil on earth has ended and that they're not driving the missionaries nuts when they come. I mean, we got some people that we used to have rules about, okay, they get 5 minutes and then we got to go bail them out. Now, if I didn't like the guy, I'd let him go, man. It's like hey, there's bad missionaries too. We've had a few. I've gotten better at the filter, but every now and then you get one. They got some crazy loon that wants to walk up and talk to them about their lumbago and their corns on their toes and how bad their marriage is and on and on and on and about their, I mean, I'm not making this up. I'm talking about stuff just as dumb as that. Hey, I'm going to read you, I did this last year. I'm going to read you the schedule for a missionary at a missions conference. And again, we do this once a year. They do this probably almost every other meeting for them. If they're on furlough or deputation, can be a missions conference. They could be in 26 meetings like this a year. Now, they'll be in 2 and 3 churches a week. In the course of a year, they will be in 52 weeks. It is very likely for them to be in over 100 churches in 52 weeks. 60, 80 is normal, probably the average. 60 to 80 a year. I'm thinking of a missionary that was on deputation for 2 years and was in nearly 300 churches. Sometimes they're at churches that got activities and special events on Tuesday nights or Thursday nights, or they have Wednesday night. They're for a Sunday in a church here, a Wednesday night here. Do you know how many churches have Thursday night services? They're in 3 churches a week, 250 churches in 2 years. And then they get there at a missions conference. Here's the schedule for one place. And this is actually very normal. 8 o'clock, breakfast. By the way, I've seen them get there at 8 o'clock, and at 8:45, somebody walks in with a box of stale donuts. But that missionary's wife had to get up and get her kids ready and be there because the pastor said be there at 8. And then somebody didn't care enough to get there till 8:45 when they could have got an extra 45 minutes sleep. And they didn't think enough but to bring a box of stale donuts. I'm telling you for real. Look, we go to these things, not just ours. I've seen this. 8 o'clock, breakfast. 9 o'clock, Christian school, speak in the classrooms. 12 o'clock, lunch in the gym. You know what that means? That's code for you're eating what the kids eat in a school cafeteria. Do you remember school cafeteria food? It's why you were bitter in childhood. 2 o'clock, visitation, soul winning. 5 o'clock, dinner. 6:15, be at the table. 6:30, service. Saturday. 8 o'clock breakfast, 9 o'clock prayer meeting, 9:30 bus visitation, noon lunch, 6 o'clock international dinner. When ours come, you know what they do? Nothing. I tell them, I did not bring you here to do my job, to do my soul winning and my visitation. I want you to, if you need the mornings for your kids, for schoolwork, these people have other obligations. They have letters to write, thank you letters to write, finances to take care of. They have contacts that they're keeping. Some of them, if they're veterans, 2 of them that are coming this week are veterans. They're keeping in touch every single day. Could you imagine if I took a year off? I'd like to imagine it, actually. But can you imagine if I took a year off? Look, I'm gone for 5 days, and I hope when I go home, the place hasn't blown apart. These people leave churches just like ours that they love for a year. A year. Do you want me to leave this church to Jay Hudson, Mike Zuder, and Jay Ken for a year? For a year. I wouldn't do that to you for one Sabbath. They're on the phone at home, man. Do you understand that a lot of times they're videoing, they're preaching in a hotel room? I'll tell you a trade secret. They're sitting in their pajama pants, but they got a shirt and tie on, and they'll preach online these days at 2 a.m. in the morning after being here on a Sunday because they don't have anybody to preach at home. They're doing that in a 6 to a 17-hour time difference. They put the missionaries' wives in the nursery and in the choir. I know a church who has cleaning supplies and a list of maintenance projects for the husband and wife waiting when they arrive. I mean, the missionary comes and they put them in a place on the church property, and they have cleaning supplies, and they want them to clean the bathrooms and mow the grass and rake the leaves. I'm saying for real. They do this to these people. How would you feel? I'll be honest. I've had people tell me that, and I take it a little bit as a compliment. They said, preacher, you'd never be a missionary. You can't survive deputation. I'd be like, you can blow your own leaves off, friend. I don't need your $30 a month that bad, because a church like that, you're lucky if you get that. Most of the places that they treated like that, they have to work like a slave, and they'll see nothing for it. Half them churches don't even pick them up. They got to go to 300 churches so they can get 70 to pick them up to get the support they need. Average, statistically. While their ministries, if they're a veteran, are suffering while they're not there. Okay, so let's give them a place where we can make them feel at home. That means we need to esteem them. Be personal with them. It's that ministry of presence. One of the things I always preach to the people that have served here through the years on staff, ministry of presence. Sometimes when you might be at a funeral or a funeral dinner, there's nothing you can say. It's the fact that you were there for someone you love. They just got to know that you're there and that you care. That's why it's important. That little table back there, it's a big deal when you sign your name to that card. I got an email from Brother Keith Stensis this week. He just got his birthday card that we mailed them 5 months ago. That was not our fault, and that was not his fault. That's just Africa. 5 months. But he was grateful. And when you see a list of names and don't be, the card looks pretty full, and they won't know if I signed it or not. Don't be a pinhead. Be a Bible Christian. Sign the card. Just put your name down. Just put Cassel family, whatever. But it just says someone at home. If you get a card from a church on your birthday and anniversary, and if it's actually sent 2-3 weeks early, which is normal, we send things out almost a month ahead, knowing this is the case often. Some of that you're just not going to avoid. But most of the time when they get it by their birthday and not after, that says there's a church that thought enough to send it with enough time to reach here. That's probably the church that's praying for us and that actually cares. And when they get here, be personable with them. Remember, I'm your pastor. Complain about your life to me. Don't gripe about your life to them. They're not here. They're not your therapist. These people got problems of your own. You're the person I'm talking about. Don't go up and tell them about what's wrong with your kids and what's wrong with your husband or your wife. I'm going to tell you what they're going to think. This is what everybody thinks. Because I go preach places and those people come up and find me and I think, the problem is you, cowboy. The problem is the person I'm talking to. I'm praying for that dude's wife right over there when he's griping at me. I'm like, I don't know her, but she needs prayer because she's married to an idiot. Look, don't gripe. Don't talk about yourself. Don't dump on them. And ask them questions. Look, ask them questions. How long you been married? How many kids you got? How old are your kids? What grade are they in? Are they in college? They married? Ask this question. Do you have grandchildren? Everybody wants to talk about them grandchildren. Okay? Where are you from? Have you ever noticed the great irony that Mark's sixth dad, who has been in Africa for over 30 years, is from Minneapolis, Minnesota? I mean, you talk about climate change. Do you know how many of these guys? Israel Warren from Florida. I mean, he is from swampy, gator-eating, anaconda, Florida, and he's in the mouth of the Yukon River in Alaska. There is no small amount of irony to the sense of humor that God has. What did you do before? Look, not all of these missionaries. Now, there's several of them that were called and they were young people and it's been they've gone to Bible college and they've maybe served for a couple of years or they're on deputation and they're starting off with young kids and a young family. We'll have 3 of those families here throughout the year, at least this year. But that's not all of them. Do you know how many pastors I know that pastor the same church for 15 to 20 years that are on the mission field? We support some. Do you know how many missionaries have their degrees and were 30 and 35 years of age? Engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and quit their jobs because God called them and went to Bible college with teenage kids and deputation with The only thing worse than taking a baby on deputation is taking a teenager. Because teenagers can be the biggest babies in the world. Do you know how many of these people owned a business? Or were a businessman making over $100,000 a year? Did you know we have some missionaries that were professional athletes? Now, we have one that was a professional soccer player. There's another one, a man that's not been here, and he's up in years now. But Bobby Bonner was an all-star Major League Baseball catcher for, I think, the Houston Astros in the 1980s. And he's planted hundreds and hundreds of churches in Africa. I think in Botswana, somewhere in that part of Africa. Do you know how many of them were in the medical field? We were in a missions conference back in October. I was preaching at down in Florida. And there was a husband and a wife and 3 kids. And that man had his doctorate degree in, I forget, physical therapy. He was like an occupational therapist or a physical therapist, but had his doctorate degree. That man had more money. He had all the money that he could want. And that family's on deputation to go to Belgium. Not an easy field. And I don't think the waffles are that good. Look, these are not people that are doing this because there's nothing else they could do, that they're the leftovers, the offscouring of society. These are people that were very, very fruitful, very intelligent, and very fruitful in their lives. Ask them, what is the language? What's it like? What's the food like? What's the culture like? Where do you meet? Do you know how many people meet under a tree? A tarp? A community center? A kitchen table? Do you know how many of your missionary wives that were raised with electricity and indoor plumbing have to use an outhouse? I'm going to tell you, that's one of the things that broke me a couple of our early trips when I saw some of the ladies that grew up in this country like we do, and the unsanitary conditions that are just a part of their life. A lot of the times, do you know how hard it is to preach? I was preaching one time, and there's an oscillating fan. We're outside, it's a block building, but it's open air, and there's an oscillating fan over my head that's going back and forth, and nobody's looking at me. I can somewhat understand that, okay? But I'm like, what is going on? I out of the corner of my eye, there's a lizard riding the oscillating fan back and forth. I don't care what sermon you got. I don't care what illustration you have. You cannot compete with a lizard on a fan. I'm thinking we have a missionary that is in an Arctic, above the Arctic Circle. And when they first went there and they got to the country, they noticed that there was all these brightly colored boxes out in people's front yards. And they thought, boy, those are pretty and kind of decorative. And boy, I hope we live someplace that we get to have something like that. Well, they did. But they didn't know what it was for. And it was for because it's 60 below zero, and they didn't have indoor plumbing. And they have an injection molded toilet that's lined with a heavy, thick-lined trash bag. Now that's just enough said. And that box is where you put the refuse. And they lived like that for several years before they got indoor plumbing. Yeah, that gives you compassion. That helps you esteem them. By the way, one of the things that we're here to do this week is because we esteem them, we're here to pay them. Look, I know they all come in and they say, and it's true, the prayer support is important, just as important as the financial support. And it may be even more important, but you can pray for people all you want, but if we don't support them financially, they'll never get there. They can't get there. They can't live on fresh air and rabbit tracks in your prayers. They got to have insurance, and they got to have out-of-country medical insurance. You know, some of these missionaries, they live in countries where it's so hard to get an appointment, and then they're new. It takes 5 to 7 years sometimes to learn the language. I know a missionary that's been in one place for 10 years and said he was still not fluent in the language, and he just worked very hard. It's not lack of intelligence. There are languages that have no rules, grammatical or oral, written of any kind. Tenses and pronouns and all that kind of things. Not structured. They can't communicate with a doctor. They got to have a special kind of insurance. They got to have a house to live in. Do you know how many places you go in this world? We had a missionary once apologized to us for a 600 square foot apartment. 600 square feet. And he said, I wouldn't have to live someplace so big except the church meets in our home. 600 square feet. I remember, because the sink is outside the bathroom. And here's a door, and you open the door, and you go in around like this, and then you close the door. And I mean, that room was it was wide enough for the toilet, and you better not be a good-sized, healthy American. Because I'm sorry, I don't know how you get in there. And you'd have to leave the door open, and it was right there in the living room. So, apologizing, and they paid almost $2,000 a month for that 20 years ago. And they didn't have hot water all day because it was solar. They got to have appliances. When they go, they don't have a washing machine. They don't have a dryer. They don't have a stove. They don't have furniture. I remember one time we were with a missionary in Germany, and they were looking at a new place, I think for the church to meet in. We walked into this apartment they were looking at, and this is what they said. Oh, look, they left the light bulbs. Because in Europe, you don't get your kitchen cabinets. When you rent walls and a floor and a ceiling, that's what you rent. You have to, every time you move, you have to take your own kitchen cabinets, your own kitchen sink, your toilet, your light bulbs. They take the switch covers and the electrical receptacle covers. Those are 89 cents a piece. But you have to get your own. And people say, well, what do you need all that money for? What do you need all your money for? Hey, what do you need all your money for? Don't ask them that question. Do you get defensive if somebody, hey, can I see your W-2s? Why would we ask that? Don't ask them. Not only that, they got to go to the dentist. They got all the you get their kids need shoes. They need clothes. They have to have ministry support because they don't have saved people in a building where they sing hymns and take up offerings. They're getting groups together for Bible studies, and they have to pay they have to pay to rent a building out of their pocket. So they have personal support and ministry support, and then their support is so it comes in so crazy for them. I don't even know how to say it, but it's different every month. The average church supports the average missionary for $75 a month. We support for $100 a month, but it's an easy number, and missionaries don't like to support for too much because then if they lose it, the pastor changes or something like that, and they lose their support. They don't want to lose a big chunk all at once, so you got $75 a month is the average. And some churches give every 2 months. Some churches give every quarter. Some churches only give $30 a month. Do you know there are some churches that give once a year or every 2 years? They don't know what their paycheck looks like every week. They just never know. Every month it's just different. They have to plan as if nothing's coming in, and something's coming, but you just don't know. How would you like to live like that? How would you like to go to work and your boss just say, "Well, I'm just not going to pay you this month. I'll pay you next month. I'll pay you every 2 months. I'll pay you once a year." Now, They have to be adaptable. We ought to esteem them. And when people, I'll tell you what, when people leave a church, the thing I think about is, who's going to take care of that missionary they were supporting? That's where my mind goes. People want to know, where's Pastor Mike? One, your heart is broken because somebody's broken. And usually by the time that they've gone, they've been gone in their pew for 6 months. They just haven't left, and you've done everything. You've exhausted everything. And he says, "Pastor, you're past that point. But I wonder, didn't you care enough for the people didn't we esteem them enough to stick out a few tough times? Everybody in this room has done that. Been here past the quitting places. I have. You have. And one of the things that helps us do that is we esteem these people. We can't even put up all the flags in this auditorium anymore of the number of nations that we support. We have to put them in the gym. I mean, we've always had the U.S. ones over there. And this year, I just decided I'm not going to try and figure out this puzzle. We have too many. We'll stick them up next door. Esteem them highly. When you fill out that card, whatever it is, these cards through the years, I remember when they were $5 and $10 and $15 a week, and then they kind of went 20 and 25 and 30 and 50 and 75 and 100. And again, everybody's faith has to grow. It's where you're at, and you might be at that 5 and 10 and 15, okay? Or $100 a month and then it was $200 a month, and some are $500 a month. I have watched the faith grow in this church. But when I fill out that card, I realize somebody is depending on me. And I want to esteem them. And I'd say this finally, esteem them prayerfully. One of the things about getting to know these people is to get to know them personally so that you know how to pray for them. Here's a few practical things, okay? Number one, get the prayer cards. When they come, they're going to have tables set up here. Each one of these missionaries they're going to get about 20 minutes to stand up and try and tell you 20 minutes. Brother Shelby is going to try and tell you in 20 minutes what he's been doing for 20 years. He can't do it. Brother Gazaway is going to try and tell you in 20 minutes what he's done for the last 5 years. The Armor Costs are going to try and tell you about what they're going to do in the country of Burma. There's no way 20 minutes can do that. But you can get a prayer card, and lots of people, you're going to find all kinds of things people have. Some people hang them on the refrigerator. Some people put up a poster board on the wall. Some people get a photo album at the Walmart that takes 5x7s. Most prayer cards fit in there, and they don't. Take the scissors to them and fit them in there. And you say, but I don't know these people. That's why they have, that back wall is covered in the foyer with something called prayer letters. If you read those letters, you'll find they say pray for, and they'll name an individual. They'll name something with a building, something with a vehicle, something with a week at camp, something with this, something with that. They're prayer letters. They're telling you what's going on. Look, just every service, go back and read one letter. I read every single prayer letter before it hits that board. I read over 30 this afternoon. Okay? I read over 100 letters. I read prayer letters of missionaries that we don't support yet because we're considering them and waiting for a time when they might be coming back from the field. There's somebody we know about, or there's somebody I've known personally. There's no way we can support everybody that we know. But I probably read 125 letters a month. And when I read that letter, whatever they say pray for, I pray for it right then and there. I was reading this afternoon, and Brother Lema, we have supported Brother Lema since they've gone to the field. They've been in Mexico forever. And as well as I think I know Brother Lema, he said something in his prayer letter I did not know. He was talking about the fact, well, he's getting older now. And he's not super old by any means, but he's getting older. And where they live in Mexico, the elevation is 8,000 feet. I didn't know that. And it's cold. And there's no heat where they live. No one has a heater. And so in the letter, he mentions the fact that his wife is making fun of him for getting old and his blood getting thin. He's diabetic. And because he has to wear 4 layers of clothing around the house because it's 55 to 60 degrees. And they're used to, in the winter months, that's cold for them. Now, we would love to see 55 to 60 degrees. But, when you live down there and it's over 100, 8 months out of the year, 55, 60 degrees, that's a pretty big temperature drop. But he's walking around the house like the Michelin Man with 4 pairs of sweatpants and 4 sweatshirts on, trying to stay warm and getting under the blankets like that. Today I said, God, please give that man a furnace of some kind. Okay, I know their homes are probably open air, but read the prayer letters. And, Paul said that, look at verse 25, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Brethren, pray for us. Philemon chapter 1 verse 4 says this. Paul said this to the church at Colossae. I thank my God, making mention of thee always in my prayer. Do you know there are some people, I cannot pray for the missionaries the same way I can for my wife, my daughter, this new thing I have called a son-in-law, the way I can pray for you. You people, I know how to pray for many of you. I don't know, but I can at least make mention. I can at least pray for the Armacost family, and I know that they need God's power in their life. I know that they need God's presence. I know that they need God to provide for them. I know that they need God to protect them supernaturally. I know that they need strength of mind in their head, strength in their hands for their ministry and their work, strength in their heart for their mood, their emotions, strength in body and health. There are certain things that we all need. And it's okay to say, Lord, I don't know these people as well as you do, obviously, as well as the Lord knows. But you know their needs. And I'm asking you to be their provider, their protector. Give them your power. Give them your provision. Give them your blessing. Give them favor. Help them to be accepted by the people and the governments that they go to serve. And Lord, they got work to do with their hands today. Strengthen their hands. Lord, strengthen their hearts. They have emotional heartaches too. Lord, strengthen their minds. We can keep them strong in body. We can pray for them. Because when they're there, they're only missionaries when they're here. When they're there, that's their home. That's their home. Many here know the story. We had a young missionary couple, and it was told by her father, the father-in-law, that when his daughter got married, they went on their honeymoon. They didn't tell Dad where they were going, and he thought, that's fine, I don't have to know. And they called while they were on their honeymoon, and Dad said, well, where are you now, honey? Talking to his daughter, where are you now? And Carol Schultz said, she said, Daddy, we're in Greenland. Not a honeymoon vacation spot. She said, Daddy, we think God wants us to be missionaries here. Boy, and this is a man that's a church planter from Maine. And he struggled with his kids going to such a difficult field. Ancestral worship, suicide, drunkenness. Second largest town in Greenland, 5,000 people. Murderers walk the street outside the prison. Literally, there's no place for them to go. You leave town, you get ate by a polar bear. They let murderers go to work hunting seals with guns. Okay? Not a pleasant place. Dirty place. They went to the mission field, and they were there for some time, and they were starting to lose support. And things weren't going well, and things were difficult. And one day, a daughter's talking to her daddy and pouring her heart out, and he's like, you just need to come home. And he said, and she said, we can't do that. He said, put Chris on the phone. And Chris, you guys got to come. We can't do that. Put Carol back on the phone. You need to come home. Just come home for a while. And this is what she said. She said, Daddy, we are home. We are home. They're still there. That's been years ago. In fact, we were there visiting them years after that story took place. I'll never forget. Daddy was there, and we were there with them, and we were singing, I've got a mansion over a hilltop. Don't think me poor or deserted or lonely. I'm not discouraged. I'm heaven bound. Boy, the tears started streaming down their cheeks, every one of them. Tears started streaming down our cheeks. You know what? Because they're not poor. They're not discouraged. Everybody gets discouraged. You can get discouraged anywhere in the world. But they know where they're going. And they know the God they serve. And church, I just can't stress it enough. We'll esteem them by being here Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, by signing up, being here Saturday, just for a meal and a fellowship. But that ministry of presence, people, to show them that we esteem them, that we care for them, to get to know them. And you'll find, I'll tell you what, you get to know them like that, you'll find something that you can pray for them personally for. They got health struggles. Some of them have diabetes. Some of them have high blood pressure. Some of them have different things just like we do. And let's esteem them highly for their love and their work's sake. Heavenly Father, we thank you for a church that has a great love, Lord, for the missions, the missionaries that, Lord, labor in the fields of the harvest, Lord, that we are not called to go to, and many would not be willing to, but they are. And Father, we pray that this week that we would be faithful, Lord, to express our esteem for them. Again, not with some kind of man-made worship, not to fill them with pride, but, Lord, to let them know your love through the prayers and the presence of your people and through our support for them. Pray that you would prepare our hearts for this week and the meeting to come, and bless now the invitation in Jesus' name. Let's stand. The piano's playing. The altar's open. You know, it wouldn't hurt tonight to come and pray for these families that are coming in right now. Pray for the Lord. Lord, do a work in my heart. What wilt thou have me to do? What love will you put in my heart that I might esteem them in their presence? Esteem them by how we support them. Esteem them with our prayers.